Yep, it's launching right now. In 2 seconds.
Okay. Again, this is the Pierce Township Board of Zoning Appeals hearing for Monday, October 26, 2020. This hearing is a scheduled continuation of a previous case. That's case VC 2020-011. I'd like to call the meeting to order. If we could get a roll call, Eddie, that'd be great.
Okay. Mr. Sander.
Here.
Mr. Lemke.
I'm here.
Mrs. Holman.
Here.
Mr. Hayes.
Here.
Mr. Gentile. And Mr. Burr. And Mr. Holte.
Here.
Sorry. Yep, we have a quorum.
Great. Thank you, Eddie. And at this time, we'll start with our Pledge of Allegiance. Could you repeat after me? I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
to the flag
flag
United
of the United States of America,
And to
to the
the
republic
for
for
which it
which it
stands,
stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible, with
with liberty and justice
for all.
for all.
Thank you very much. I know that we have the Fraleys with us here this evening, and they'll be familiar with this oath. We'd like you to submit to it again. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that you will tell the truth in these proceedings, Mr. and Mrs. Fraley?
Yes. Yes, we do.
Thank you. Okay, Eddie, can we start with I guess a quick staff presentation review here as we get into this continuation?
Yeah, definitely. The one quick thing that we need, Attorney Keating mentioned that he would like for us to formally make the motion and vote to reopen the public hearing.
Okay.
If we can do.
In that case, I'll move that we reopen the public hearing. This is Lemke.
Second, Hayes.
Okay. Thank you. Sander,
Yes.
Holman,
Yes.
Holte,
Yes.
Hayes,
Yes.
and Lemke.
Yes.
Okay. The motion passes. All right. So as you recall, this is variance case 2020-011. There are two variances from section 4.06-1, which pertains to structures located in the rear yard, as well as 4.062, which pertains to the lot coverage of accessory structures. The property is at 1087 White Oak Road, and the applicants are the Fraleys. Pursuant to the prior meeting, during discussions, the board requested slightly more clarifying information, which the Fraleys have provided. So staff and the applicant are here if you need it, have any questions.
Hey, thank you, Eddie. Mr. and Mrs. Fraley, the additional documentation you provided is pretty straightforward, but would you like to add any commentary to this?
No?
Yeah, I think the only thing is so I had the architect draw it up for us. He didn't put we're going to put a couple trees in. Yours didn't look like it came through very well. It doesn't really show the driveway, like it didn't come through on the.
It's not coming through on the video. That doesn't mean it's not
video.
on the one they have, because I sent them this.
Can you see the driveway coming down on your screen?
I can in the hard copy I have. Yes, Mr. Fraley.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So right there where it turns, and kind of does
Oh,
right,
look at that.
there you go. So right where it says existing drive, on the right side of that, that's where we're planning on putting a couple of trees in there to kind of block the view coming down that driveway. He just draw them in there.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah.
And thank you for providing these drawings. Very helpful, and at least speaking for myself, exactly what I was looking for. So thank you.
Sure. Yeah. No problem.
Yeah, and the architect knew exactly what you wanted. As soon as we said whatever you called them, he was like, oh yeah, renderings. I'll do that.
Great.
This is Lemke. Can I just ask one question more or less for the record?
Yes.
Mr. and Mrs. Fraley, this document that we're looking at that's up on the screen does show where you intend to locate the pole barn, and then over to it's off my screen at the moment, but the right-hand side, as I was looking at the original document, that depicts in general what the structure is supposed to look like, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Just wanted to get that in the record. Thanks so much.
Yep.
Do anybody else on the board have some questions or comments here for the Fraley's?
Hayes here. If you're going to put trees right at that turn, and I thought the original thought was to have the driveway come almost straight into the north-facing door on the barn. Are you
Well,
changing that to come around to the area between the barn and the house?
No, the original drawing, the barn was too far over to the left. The drawing was incorrect. And so we had him draw it in the correct location. And by putting trees in the grassy area across the drive, it actually would block most of the view of the barn or the garage from the street. So it was drawn incorrectly on the first drawing, and we tried to scratch it out and move it. This is correct.
And the positioning of the trees then, Ms. Fraley, is on the street side of where the driveway is going then?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, I didn't understand that before, but that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, we have a big grassy field in the front of the house, and the trees will go there, which will also help us. We have a water problem, as everybody in Claremont County does, so it'll help us soak up some of that water in the field too.
Great. Thank you very much. If there are no other questions or comments from the board, I'm obligated, even if it seems a little redundant, to entertain a motion to, well, actually, we've already opened public comment, so I want to give anybody that may have joined us from the public an opportunity to speak. Is there anybody on this call that would like to do so?
This is Sander. I have one question.
Oh, sure. Go ahead, Bob.
The entrance to the barn, will there be a driveway on the east side or the north side?
It's gonna be on the north side, so the driveway will come down straight, and as straight as possible. You know, it looks like it's gonna turn a little bit there. I didn't have him draw the driveway in because I'm not really sure how big the pad's gonna be. So we're gonna pour a concrete pad out of the front of this thing, where the garage door is. But the intent is to come straight down the existing driveway to the garage door that's facing that driveway right now, and then and then it's going to split off and go to the west towards the house, so we can have a big turnaround. I don't know if you can understand what I'm saying there.
Yeah, isn't that east toward the
East.
house?
East. I'm sorry. Yes, east. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yes.
You're West Star
Yeah.
East. I don't know.
and the reason for that is because there's another overhead door on the east side of the building. So I need to continue a driveway over on that side so I can pull equipment in and out.
Yes, I understand that, and that's good. I just didn't I would be not pleased if the driveway was on the west side of the.
No,
Now
that's all trees.
that's all trees, and then we're gonna plant grass. Well, between the trees and the building.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that clarification.
Yep.
Okay, and one last time, anybody that's joined us from the public that would like to comment or has questions? Okay, with that in mind, I'd entertain a motion to close public comment.
So moved.
Second.
Eddie, a roll call? Eddie, can we get a roll on closing the public comment?
You're muted, Eddie.
Yeah, I didn't realize I was muted. Sorry. Mr. Sander?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Holte?
Yes.
Mr. Lemke?
Yes,
Mrs. Holman?
Yes.
And Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion on behalf of the board regarding this variance request?
Hayes here. As I looked at the neighborhood, I know that one of the concerns here is that the accessory structure is not in the rear yard. We've talked about that a bit, but as I looked at the rest of the neighborhood, that stretch of White Oak Road has several accessory buildings on properties that you can't really tell where the buildings are located. So I'm less concerned about this in terms of changing the character of the neighborhood, even though it does it is in variance with the zoning resolution, and especially with the tree placement there that will greatly limit the view of that accessory building.
I agree with you 100%, Fred. And actually, the placement of the structure is even kinder or more agreeable to those residents, as we heard, that live behind the Fraley. So I think the location and it's in keeping with their surroundings there. So I agree with you 100%. Other comments or questions?
I don't know that this is in a very real strict sense a zoning concern, but as I look at it, it seems to me that where they're proposing to put the structure is a more sensible location than where they would be permitted to put it without a variance.
I would agree. I would agree with that as well.
And I agree with that as well.
Okay, well, since we're all in, in agreement, I want to thank the Fraleys for submitting this additional documentation. I, for one, have found it very helpful. Certainly what I had in mind when having made that request. All of that considered, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve or deny this request.
And also to keep in mind, there are two requests within. So you can make a motion that addresses both requests, or you can make two separate motions for one for each, whatever your comfort is.
Okay, for the two variances, Eddie, that's what you're referring to.
That is correct. Yep.
Yeah, we never talked about or we talked very, very little the last time about the difference, the variance in the square footage of the accessory structure. And I find it to be so close to the 5 acre point that I find the difference fairly small, and I don't think it is material.
I'll concur with that.
Well, if we're all agreed, then I move that this board approve both variances, both for the placement of the accessory structure in the side to front yard rather than the rear yard, and the variance on the dimensional variance on the square footage of the accessory structure. As in keeping with the staff comments and with the plans that were submitted and dated whenever the dates are, and also with the condition that all laws be adhered to, and that the vegetative buffer is indeed planted on the north side of the driveway in front of the accessory building.
This is
Second,
this is Sander. I'll second that, but I won't repeat everything that Fred said.
I think I'd have trouble.
Yeah. I don't mean to be a
Try to
stickler. I
include
got 2
everything.
seconds there.
I'll
Just
defer
for
to
the
Mr. Sander.
Mr. Lemke, did you say you're yielding?
I will defer to Mr. Sander, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So roll call. Mr. Holty,
Yes.
Mr. Lemke,
Yes,
Mrs. Holman,
Yes.
Mr. Sander,
Yes.
and Mr. Hayes.
Yes.
And the motion passes.
Yeah, we thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good luck to you both.
Hey,
Thank
thank you
you.
very much for your time.
All right.
thank you for the updated drawings.
Sure.
Yeah,
All right, we're off to the permit central now. Wish us luck.
Good
All
luck.
right, thanks, guys. Have a great week.
You too.
Take care, you too.
To the board, unless there is some other business we need to discuss, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Eddie, I think before we close this one too quickly, I don't have any new business, but I think there were some learnings here that us getting to know you and you getting to know us. I think that it would be good standard practice to have drawings like this, renderings, in all of the applications that have to do with variances on positioning and on what the structure looks like. And so I think you ought to feel empowered to ask for that kind of documentation as part of any variance request.
Okay. That's noted. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, really. And I would like to see you use signs on properties to aid in the identification of the property being reviewed in an upcoming Board of Zoning Appeals. This one was fairly clear. I could find this one fairly quickly, but there was a property that we did the last time that was out on just off of 125 by St. Thomas More. I forget the name of the street now, but the
Bolton
numbering
Creek?
was so bad that it was confusing. I went past the properties looking for the right address and had to come back to where the actual property was. And I think that had to do with the way that the driveways were arranged into the property. But it'd be good to have some kind of sign that says to all of the neighbors too, hey, this property is being reviewed by the Board of Zoning Appeals at the upcoming meeting. Maybe a week ahead of time or something like that.
It's an interesting suggestion, Fred, but I don't know. Can we actually do that? Eddie, require that people put a sign up? I mean, that invites, Ray, you're the attorney.
No, I'm asking the township to do that.
Oh,
I believe Anderson Township does that, don't they, Fred?
Yes, they do.
oh, really? It's like a yard sign, Fred, or what does it look like?
A freestanding, the most ugly sign that you can ever imagine. But it's a plain a black wrought iron frame to it and a white sign that has standard printing on it. And then it's actually a black mark scribbled the exact details of the date of the meeting and the case number.
Interesting.
I mean, without having, this is, excuse me, completely off the cuff. I haven't researched this at all, but I kind of think that's probably something the trustees would have to add into the zoning ordinance as part of the procedures for a variance request and a variance hearing. I'd be just a little bit uncomfortable saying that we could mandate that ourselves.
I agree with Ray.
Yeah. And Fred, while I understand your point, I'm not sure I love that idea. If only because I'm not sure I love that idea.
I think Google Maps gets us to where we need to go.
Well, in fairness to Fred, though, you've got to concede that there are places around the township where our street numbering is just utterly confounding.
Oh, no, I certainly understand how it would help assist in that. I guess I'm more, and maybe I'm just hypersensitive to it, but I'd be a little concerned that posting something that visible would almost invite interest. I don't know. I would be a little concerned that maybe folks that didn't really have a direct interest in a case like that would get involved fairly or unfairly to the homeowner. Maybe that's a silly concern, but anyhow.
That hasn't been the experience there in Anderson Township.
Right.
And we often ask the neighboring property owners, or we ask Eddie if the neighboring property owners are aware of the hearing and if they have made any comments. This sign helps them be aware. If they don't get their mail or they don't read their mail or whatever, they won't be able to miss the ugly sign. And the sign only stays there for 1 week. As soon as the hearing's done, the sign comes out.
Sign comes down. Okay.
You know, on that too, just for the record, we did send out letters of the continued hearing to the adjoiners as well. Just a reminder. And then the other thing on the renderings, you know, we kind of walk a tightrope as far as, you know, applicants not wanting to commit certain amounts of resources and all those sorts of things. But now that I'm kind of learning exactly what you guys are looking for, I can definitely proceed with more confidence as far as when I'm pressing them, and I can tell them with confidence that this will most likely be a determining factor. So be aware of that sort of thing. So I can definitely provide that information with good clarity moving forward.
That's good, Eddie. And that's why I brought the topic up, is to just have you be confident about asking for that.
Because you know, I've been in a circumstance too before where I've requested information and then they show up at the hearing and the board says, this is completely unnecessary. And all of a sudden I'm like, well, I've got egg on my face, you know, but so I think we're on the same page though. So I feel good now.
Yeah, we've got to stay on the same page.
Yep.
Well, I'll second that on renderings of the type that we got for the second go around on this case. I don't know that we can mandate it, but I think that it could certainly be suggested to the applicants that preparing something like that is going to be conducive to a full and potentially more receptive consideration of their application. On the sign, I'm not going to take a position on the merits of requiring the sign, just sort of reiterate what I said, that I would be a lot more comfortable with that were that something passed on by the elected trustees rather than the appointed board.
Eddie, are you able to, I guess, you know, capture Fred's suggestion and relay it to, I guess, to the trustees for consideration, or the regular zoning commission, or?
Well, wouldn't we all have to agree to that before it goes to the trustees?
Well, that's a good question.
And that's a good question. I don't know. Have we ever made a recommendation to the trustees or anything?
This is some more tight roping on my end. So I'm in the position at this very moment where the last thing I would want to do is kind of jump in between and be the voice of the board if the board is not unanimous on something. But, you know, if anyone in particular on the BZA wanted to discuss with a particular member of the trustees, I mean, I think that would be a personal preference situation. But I think for me to proceed, I think that a motion would probably be good housekeeping, just so that I'm not steamrolling over someone inadvertently.
Hey, Eddie, here's a question that I don't know the answer to, but where does something like that fall between our authority and the authority of the zoning commission?
So it's a great question. As far as going above and beyond, the practice and my understanding has been, if we're going above and beyond the statutory requirements to advertise, there's no harm, no foul. The actual substantive issue we're dealing with here is the allocation of resources, and that we'd have to go by signage. We probably have to do it for all the boards, and that in of itself is more of it's a budgetary issue, which I would say, I would defer to the trustees since they're the fiduciaries of the budget. But as far as going above and beyond, I don't know that we would have to change the resolution or anything, because we're going, we could put these articles in the New York Times for all anyone cares. I mean, that's preference in that way. That's my understanding.
Eddie, this is Bob. Since you've been here, has there been anybody that, any neighbors of individuals that we approved a variance for, that has come to you afterward and said, "Oh, I wish I knew about this"?
Actually, surprisingly, no. And I say surprisingly just because inevitably, I think that that's bound to happen. Even the most common way that I've heard that statement kind of given is when somebody's actually in the meeting and they say, if only I had known about this hearing last month, I would have been able to do X, Y, and Z. But so they've still learned about the meeting. But I haven't had anything where someone has said, I had no idea this was happening. I completely oppose this, all that sort of thing. It seems like people are picking up because we advertise pretty far and wide. Laura is very concise with combing through each address to make sure we're hitting all the adjoiners and all that sort of thing. So, but that's not to say that what Mr. Hayes is proposing is not it's not out of the realm of what's considered it's normal in a lot of jurisdictions. It's a preference circumstance. I think some people appreciate that level of transparency, but at the same time, it's not statutorily required either. So it's,
Well, we've been doing it this way for how many years, without signage. And as you said, Eddie, we haven't had anybody come and say, why didn't you tell me? So I don't know if it's just another additional thing, or can we just stay with the status quo? I think what we're doing has been fine.
I'll tell you my own selfish take on this is that it's, and I think that it's partially a function of this might be some of the busiest few months of BZA hearings I think that we've had on record. And, we're here to serve. And I think the part of the balance for us is, as a governmental entity, we don't get that. We're not like a private entity can say, hey, we've got 45 contracts this month. Sorry, we can't take your contract up until that. For us, if it comes through the door, we have to handle it, period, within the strict guidelines. And so for us, I'm always concerned about just having, the manpower issues. Where, gosh, if we got to make sure we get 5 signs because, if we have multiple meetings that month or multiple variances, someone has to make the sign, those different sorts of things, which it can all be managed. But, I think we're growing rapidly right now. And it's kind of like, I think that it's definitely something to consider it in a wholesome way so that was a lot of babbling to say. I do think it's a good idea, but someone's going to have to do those letters, and I guess we get it figured out. But
well, in fairness to you, Fred, would you like to put forward a motion on this suggestion?
Well, let me change that suggestion, Mr. Hulty. I am comfortable in taking the issue to the Board of Trustees. I'm ready to make a motion here to this board, but this board doesn't really have the authority to require that. We are really what they say, quasi judicial. We're really sit and to hear an appeal and not to do the day-to-day administration. My thought was just a suggestion to the township operations and Eddie in the person of the township operations. So I'm a little uncomfortable in trying to put this board into a formal request or a formal proposal or something. But I'm comfortable in personally going to the trustees and talking to them about it. So which would you prefer? I can do either.
I think your suggestion is a sound one. Advance those conversations directly on your own there. I agree with you as far as the standing of this board and our ability to do that. That's just my opinion. I'll defer to the rest of the team here.
This is Lemke. I'm going to go along with the notion that I think making that sort of a recommendation to the trustees in a formal sense by the board, maybe, I don't know, that's completely out of our authority, but I think it's getting to the very extreme edge.
Okay. Lynn, how about you?
I'll agree with what Ray's saying.
And Bob?
Yeah, I think that the reason I asked for clarification before, have we had any problems? So I'm not sure. And the answer was, to our knowledge, we have not had any problems. It might be a nice thing to do, but maybe we're trying to address a problem that's not there.
I agree.
I mean,
I think it's just because it needs to be said. I think this is some of the most aggressive levels of self-control regarding transparency I've ever seen. It's pretty impressive. I mean, I think this is a great discussion about transparency, and I think that this kind of item that you're discussing right now about which way to go, as far as can the BZA or should the BZA be making recommendations about ways to proceed or improve? I think that I personally, professionally, I welcome that approach. I think that that's healthy. You know, I have heard, to be fair to Mr. Hayes, I've heard BZAs kind of say, hey, you know, we'd love for this to be further explored, sort of thing. Maybe not, you know, stopping short of saying I want this done, sort of thing. But maybe, anyhow, that's just my 2 cents. I think these are great conversations because it helps us to continuously improve.
And that was the
This is
intent of
Lemke.
raising it. What are you really saying there, though, Eddie? Do you want me to make a motion that the board asks you to explore it?
I think that I fall into the camp of, you know, I don't see there to be a pressing problem, so I don't feel a real forceful need to proceed, but I'm at your service at the same time. And so if I'm all for exploring ways to improve our I know, like when I was hired, it was very clear to me that, you know, we want the highest levels of transparency. We want communication going between the board, staff, and elected officials, that sort of thing. So I think that those are all phenomenal conversations. But having said that, I don't see there to be a pressing issue that needs to be solved right now. But that's just my perception. That's not necessarily reality either.
this is Lemke. Here's my thought on how we proceed on this is, Fred, if you're willing to talk to one or more of the trustees and raise the issue with them, maybe that's the way to go. Then if the trustees kind of kick the thing back to us and say, well, what does the board as a collective body think about this? We can address the issue again at that point in time.
And just making sure that, Fred, if you do that, that you are expressing your opinion to them, not the board's opinion.
Precisely.
Yeah.
That's the way I'll go then.
Okay. unless there's more to be said on that or anything else, I'll entertain that meeting to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All right, Mr. Sander,
Yes.
Mr. Holte,
Yes.
Mr. Lemke,
Yes.
Mrs. Holman,
Yes.
and Mr. Hayes.
Yes.
The motion passes.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, all.
Have a good
Take care and
holiday.
stay safe, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.